Welcome to Adventures in Consciousness, the interactive show that offers expansive conversation with pioneering new thought teachers and personal real-time guided journeys into the imaginal realm to access your soul's wisdom and discover how to live your greater story. Here is your host, human potentialist, soul mentor, and consciousness guide, Jennifer Evanko.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have to say we're in for a really amazing treat today, because my guest is a transformational speaker, best-selling author, and life coach, Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia is one of the preeminent authorities on consciousness and the newly converging fields of quantum physics, quantum biology, the placebo effect, positive psychology, sociology, and alternative medicine. She has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA degree, a doctor in divinity, and has a second degree black belt in Kook Soul One. I get it?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Jennifer. It's such a pleasure to be on the show today.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention that you are the founder of Reality Shifters, president of International Mandela Effect Conference, managing director of Foundation of Mind, and creator and host of Living the Quantum Dream. And I have to say, personally, I'm very excited to speak with you because you bring science and this esoteric knowledge, or this knowledge of consciousness, together. As I've listened to your interviews and read your website and your books, you have so much to share with us. So I'm very excited about today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
In the intro, I mentioned that you're a best-selling author. I mean, you actually have written 6 books that help people visualize and access whole new worlds of possibility. And that's, of course, where we like to play in that field of pure possibility. We're starting with 2 of the books, are Quantum Jumps, An Extraordinary Science of Happiness and Prosperity. And the other book is Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. So both of these books are fascinating books into consciousness and reality. And so I'd love to start there with having you tell us, what is quantum jumping?
Well, that one is where we get into making active choices. And it's like the science of visualization, where what we can imagine, as long as it's also what we love and what we need, it can instantly happen. And there's a real connection between our mind and our body and what we're imagining. And these parallel worlds of possibility are actually right there. They're right adjacent to us, just like right next to us, if you want to think of it that way. And it's possible to access them through energy, which can come through meditation and feelings like reverence and awe and wonder, which pull us out of our everyday egoic self and into basically a higher level of consciousness, which is our true identity.
You know, my teacher used to tell me about the imaginal field, stepping out of beyond imagination into the imaginal. And you also just mentioned that we have to be in that space of reverence and possibilities, but still. So can you speak a little bit about how you actually do this jumping from that?
Well, physicist John Wheeler talked about this being a participatory cosmos, and it really is. There's also now a majority of physicists that understand that we live in a sort of this, what do you call it? A superposition of states is what it's called. It means that we're simultaneously aware of multiple realities. And so the way that we access this is really, I talked about lining it all up. That's where we get our best results. Often when we're feeling agitated or scared or there's an emergency, we can experience a quantum jump. And it's exactly what we need. And this is how people sometimes notice that they escaped an impossible to escape situation, which makes no sense logically, but somehow, for example, a vehicle went right through them. They traded places in a narrow tunnel, for example. This sort of thing happens a lot more than people realize. And it brings up this idea of quantum immortality sometimes, but it's just a basic quantum property. When we want to engage this power of quantum jumping and do this consciously, then it starts with really recognizing that we are the consciousness. We're not the physical situation. So we're always going to be bigger just by virtue of who we truly are than what it seems like is happening right now. So that's really the first step, is just getting calm, getting grounded, relaxing, breathing deeply, and simultaneously accessing this energy state of knowing that you're part of something far greater than your physical self. And through that awareness, you can then recognize that there are other possible physical realities. I like to just ask the question, how good can it get? With the feeling for all concerned. I don't want to keep things too narrow. I like things to be optimal for everyone whenever possible.
I love how you said we are the consciousness, and I've heard that so many times, but the way you just said it, it takes on something bigger, that we can choose our matter, our reality. Right?
Yes. Yeah, to me, that's the key, is accessing that feeling of, for me, it's reverence. It's that I can be thankful, I can be grateful, I can be joyful, and then for me personally, when I get to that feeling of reverence, like just that awe and wonder and feeling of, wow, this moment right here is enough. There are so many gifts in this moment right here. And just letting myself feel that, opening myself up to that ultimate reality, which I think somehow we block ourselves from, because we just get blinded with what we think is happening.
Well, and it brings in a whole new thought of free will or a choice. If we can get into that state and then observe where we are, then maybe you can shift.
Right. It starts with that awareness that there are this, like I said, an adjacent possible reality where you have the money that you need, where the problem that you're so worried about is not a problem. That adjacent reality is just right next to you. It's just allowing that you can relax. Often we're anxious, we get nervous, understandably, because we're very vulnerable animals. We're in human bodies, and so we clearly are born vulnerable, and frequently throughout our lives we feel like possibly we could adopt sort of that victim feeling, and it's not where we want to get stuck. So we don't want to stay feeling grief and sadness or anger, or also people sometimes get into that state of feeling afraid for others and trying to save the world. But all of that's unnecessary. There's a deeper reality, and it's experiential. So I'm actually talking about that a lot here, because it seems like that's the real key that people need the most to understand. That the meditative practices that are so frequently recommended are very valuable and are the foundation for all of this.
And that's my background, is meditation. However, I think what you're bringing to it too is that way to understand it scientifically, because we still have to train the mind to manifest what we want, and so you have to have a belief in what you're trying to create.
Well, I think it's easiest for people to know that something's already there, that it's like there is a reality where your body knows how to become healthy. Regardless, it doesn't matter what the doctor just told you. It really doesn't matter. I know people think like, well, the doctor just said this. That's true. But I've seen so many cases where it doesn't matter what the doctor said, including broken bones being healed again, cuts vanishing instantly, cancer vanishing inexplicably. Now, these are often called just anonymous. What's the word for it? That's not anonymous. I think they want to stay anonymous, these events, but it's more like it's anomalous. So it's something that a doctor can't explain, and to them it's something, well, that just happened. But it is a valuable case study. It's not something that didn't happen, and it's happened to so many people that I know personally, as well as myself, that I can't just keep dismissing it and pretending these things don't happen. Some people call them miracles, but spontaneous remission is real, and it has a quantum construct to it. To me, it makes sense from that quantum way of thinking.
And that's beautifully, like, that gives us the thread to follow to make it real, having this new science that's coming out.
Yes.
I want to back up just a little bit, because a lot of people are having experiences now, and they're trying to understand, is this real, is this not real? And I think of you as a child, or when you first experienced this, how did you know, or what was your first experience, and then how did you know it was real?
Yeah, well, it was sort of layers of knowingness. When I came into this life, I did have memories of being a being before this life, which makes it easy for me to know that I'm consciousness. So that's something that I realize a lot of people don't have coming in. They don't have that born aware kind of a feeling. Actually, a lot of people do have it, but it doesn't get reinforced in our culture. And so, but I think that was a valuable part of my personal upbringing. And then for me personally, I noticed that I could think things like stop rain, start rain. And if it was just me, I had this oneness with nature, where it's like weather was just was me. The world was me. I was at ease with animals like bees and insects, and I was not afraid of getting bitten by dogs or stung by bees, because I felt like there was an affinity that I had with everything around me, that I could feel the consciousness that we shared. I could feel it with rocks, with the weather, with everything. So that's a little different about me. And obviously, I think that helps. I think if you've got that, great. Then you're probably, that probably is some kind of an advantage here. But then I would notice that things I really needed, they would happen. And it started occurring to me that this is more than chance, that if I really need something, if it's just the right amount of money or just the right amount of time or whatever it might be, these things would be there. If I didn't really need it, then maybe not. So this was a very interesting part of my spiritual path as well, recognizing that when we have that sense of reverence, that we're gifted with everything we need. And maybe some things we love and they're not with us right now, but we can still love them from afar until we're together. And so it's kind of cool.
You talk a lot in your books about these quantum jumps and being able to choose, like your question you like to ask, how good can it get? As you're talking about being aware when you were born, we actually can go and shift our past as well. So we can step into that life where we were aware and repattern what's happened since, and recapture that being aware.
Yes, there's a real sense of the possibility of being able to make a delayed choice. So you can choose something after the fact, and that's a phrase from quantum physics, where they have experiments, the quantum eraser experiments and delayed choice experiments. They used to be hypothetical experiments. Again, John Wheeler, the physicist, proposed them originally, and now they're actually happening, and they have happened, and they prove without a question or a doubt that an observer can influence past events. So we can do that in our lives as well, and we often do. We can reach back and hold hope for the past. We can keep love in our hearts for all of our relations, including our families of origin, where we may have had all kinds of trauma. We can still put love and bring healing back to that. And you can see instantaneous results sometimes from some of these practices.
I apologize. I'm in the middle of the city and some of the interesting sounds. But I loved your quantum eraser. I mean, it's almost like we can carry this little quantum eraser around and strike that, reverse it. So, so I'm thinking about quantum jumping and changing. I was often told by my mentor to imagine a world that works, and to actually take journeys or meditations and go and explore and find that world that works going into the future. Have you experienced any of that? Can you share any?
Yes.
The future?
Yes, I had a dream the other night that it seemed like a normal dream, but it was beautiful. And I was experiencing a city that I live in. I live in Berkeley, California, but in the dream, it was amazing. There were these sort of utopian shopping areas that were also gardens of immense beauty, where children were playing in fountains, and it just seemed idyllic. The shops were like museums where I was learning something, and in a state of awe and wonder. I felt like I was in temples, and the best temples, the best museums that were supposedly shops. That was the background and the setting for the dream. And I had dreamed that night. I slept for 12 hours, and it was mostly dreaming. And that was the dream I remembered when I woke up. And I realized this is a future that we can create, where instead of fighting with one another and arguing and feeling like people are picking on us, or that we're not accepted as we are, that we're not being respected by others in our culture, it was man, it was amazing. I felt like we were building this. I felt exhilarated. I felt it was completely normal in the dream. That was the thing that was so cool, to wake up and realize that is normal. Yes, 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 yes. We need this. I just felt like I'm voting yes. I've seen it. I vote yes. So it didn't feel like a big, all the, I don't want to mention all the problems, but I saw a complete absence of all the problems that I'm aware of in everyday reality now.
Beautiful. I imagine you seem to do your work then through lucid dreaming and journeys that way, yes?
Yes, I do a lot of very active work in the imaginal realms, which to me are very real. So I feel that that's where, that like this dream that I had, that's realer than real. And I knew that I wasn't the only one there. I could feel that there's a presence, that this is being co-created, it's being chosen, that there can be a world where people have free will, and yet they're also respectful with others, and everyone can be healthy, and so on and so forth, and joyful. And children are, like, all age levels were represented beautifully, and it didn't feel like it was narrow. So it starts with that imagination. Then it gets into the second step of quantum jumping. The first one is imagination, the imaginal realm, knowing that we have, like our hand has all these different fingers. These could be imagined as different possible realities that you're feeling that day. And each moment, through your attitude and your emotional state, your energetic state, you're choosing which reality you're selecting. So to me, I can feel this. I feel like every minute, every day I'm choosing. It doesn't matter if I'm trying to choose it. I know it's happening anyway. So then I do my best to choose which one feels best today. And what I tend to consistently choose is the one where I'm in highest service today to all that is best, to that divine source energy, unconditional love energy, highest love. And with that selection, then comes the energy and the feeling of love that powers it up. And then when I know, yes, we need this, and I act as if we have it, that would be the third step. So it's really imagination, kind of at the head level. And then the energy comes from the heart, just knowing, like, yes, I love this. And then we're voting with our lower chakras, our lower energy centers, with what we need. And then acting as if, just moving through the world, like, yep, that's what we're doing. That is the real reality. That's what we're choosing for all of us.
Beautiful. I love that structure, of waking up and definitely moving with that sense of feeling. For me, works as well. But sometimes there's a sound. I can put a sound to the reality that I want, and I keep following the sound, the vibration. So there's different ways.
Yeah, I think we're all wired differently. Some people are very visually oriented, so they really get a clear vision. Like, I have to see it, or I've got that feeling. And for me, I feel like for me, it's feeling based. So it's more of the emotion is what is active for me. But whatever works. Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about, you've done so much research, and you talk about the holographic reality and the consciousness and universe, and how do you see these different possible use? How does that work?
Well, I like to choose for myself that they're all going to be choosing to be in highest service. So I'm actually personally pruning my own tree like a bonsai. I'm kind of choosing, like, I just want me to be in highest service in all possible versions of me personally. That's what and I've been doing this for more than 20 years. It's a daily meditation. So it does have an effect. It does start bringing that in a little bit, but still, sometimes other things happen, and I know it's part of the journey. Such as when someone reported that they knew I had died. And this is not a gentleman that I knew. He just contacted me to let me know. It's just like the Mandela effect, where people notice, some people remember Nelson Mandela passed away when he was in jail. And this gentleman, Steve Boucher from Canada, emailed me and said, "You don't know me, and this may sound really weird, but I'm just glad to know that you're alive, because I did see a report on social media, on Facebook, by your husband, that after a long illness you had passed away." And so this, of course, I didn't take it badly at all, because just like when I mentioned something similar to a physicist that he hadn't existed when I wrote my book Quantum Jumps, he took it really well. He's a world-renowned physicist working. So yeah, he just like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, really? and he wanted an autographed copy of Quantum Jumps. So I was like, cool. I'm glad he didn't take that badly, and I didn't take this badly. Instead, I asked, okay, give me the details, Steve. Let me know, when was this? Any details at all? That's how I found out it was Facebook and so on. He gave me the year, the time frame, and I was curious because it did dovetail with a time in my life when I had been very sick. I had pneumonia that was starting to get worse, and then there was a turning point where it just cleared up. But it might have, I guess, in some realities, it didn't clear up, and I did pass away. So then I put the question out to lots of people through my newsletter and social media. Anybody else notice this? And I did get about a dozen responses from around the world. There was a woman in Denmark and people just all over the place saying, yes, they'd seen me pass, that I had died. And various people had talked about it. Rupert Sheldrake had mentioned me as having passed away. And that's how the woman in Denmark found my work. And then she found out I was alive and was thrilled, like, oh, good, you're alive. Rupert Sheldrake said you were dead. So very funny. Funny now, but yeah, so these things are interesting.
I was going to say, it's so interesting and so easy for us to just write it off as a Facebook, something somebody put up there. But if we start feeling into it, there's more.
There's a lot more. Yes. And it can be quite wonderful. I think what the gift is, the potential of the gift is that we don't have to be afraid of anything, that we can start having a great deal more trust and being more joyful and just fun, having fun with life. Going for that higher frequency note, that that good sound, or that good feeling.
Well, and like you keep asking or reminding us, how good can it get?
Yes.
I think that's an important key, is we get conditioned to be in the reality that we're on right now, and then how do we make that jump to start seeing possibilities? And it's changing frequency.
That phrase is a really good mantra, precisely because it does address that maybe unspoken tendency that humans have to fixate on what next, meaning what's going to go wrong next. And I don't know if that's true everywhere in the world, but in some cultures it's quite prevalent, and it would be good to start tipping things in a positive direction, away from what next to how good can it get, and let's see what that can be.
Yeah, and finding that world that works, as Jean Houston always says. Let's find the world that works.
There are lots of them, yeah. So it becomes this dance. It's like enjoying lots of music and finding which ones that you most enjoy. To me, it's very natural, like a tree, like it grows, and at each decision point we can make a choice, and often we don't notice that we're quantum jumping every time we do make a choice, that is a quantum jump, that it's happening constantly. And it's how nature operates too, and we can see evidence of it in some of the things that happen with mutations and the way that organisms evolve and so forth.
You talk about, you said the 5, like your fingers, 5, and I kind of see it as in a spectrum of realities, that we're moving through.
Yes.
But there's also infinite possibilities. You can't even number, right?
This is one decision point is like 5 choices in that second, and then the next second here's another 5. So it's like it's like an explosion, So of course there's an infinite number, but it doesn't. Usually we can only handle maybe 1 or 2 things in any given moment. So for example, yeah, go ahead.
No, please.
Well, my family, we had a dog that was getting elderly, and he was getting cataracts in his eyes, and I noticed that, and I realized that's a decision point, right? I'm observing. I know that I can observe from that level of joy, or I can go into that fear. If I stay in the fear, then we've locked in and kind of quantum locked, or quantum Zeno effect locked that situation. Then the dog does have cataracts. But I know I can choose other than that. So I choose other than that because I feel like I can imagine other. So it's 2 choices in that given second for me as I'm with the dog, and I'm thinking, okay, so the dog does not have cataracts, our dear beloved dog. And so I hug him, look at his eyes. They're clear, perfect. And then a little while later, my husband says to me, I've got bad news about the dog. And I said, oh, is it his eyes? Yes. And I said, cataracts? Yes. And then I remind my husband, well, you know how this works. He can have cataracts, or maybe he doesn't. We can choose. So I go through all that. Okay. And fine. He's fine. Then my daughter says bad news about the dog, and it's her dog. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then at that point, yes, but you know how this works, is yada, yada. So we get to the same place, but that's 3 of us, each of us with 2 choices at those 3 moments. and 3 of us locking it in. The dog does not have cataracts. And so we all got to see that reality. We all got to talk about it. And then 3 different times with 3 of us, we all voted he's fine. And of course he was fine. And he lived on to, great old age with great vision. No more cataracts coming in at all.
I love that. That's an example of projections, how we can project onto the experience of the dog, but also the collective, how important it is for the collective to, how good can it get has this mantra that we need to share and create a different collective.
Yeah, it's a great one to just write it down, put it in your refrigerator, put it in your wallet, put it on the visor of your car, put it everywhere. Because it's extremely empowering and energizing, and it has the ability. It doesn't matter if things are already good. Ask it anyway. How good can it get? And if things are kind of like, well, it's okay. It's things are all right. Then of course, ask how good can it get? And if things feel like this is a mess and there's no way that we can even get out of this, definitely ask how good can it get?
Beautiful. So, Cynthia, let's take a moment now, and I'd like to go to break. You are listening to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation. And please stay with us because we will have more with Cynthia as soon as we return.
Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
There is no greater mystery in life than you. So why not take a fully experiential plunge into the depths of your being to uncover and retrieve all the secrets and wisdom your soul is crying out for you to know? If you enjoy Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation, you'll love Adventures in Consciousness, the course. Join Jennifer in this unique 13-week series of journeys specifically designed to unlock the mysteries of yourself. Each week, you'll journey progressively deeper into the meta realm, where, freed from the limitations of your mind, you'll get to play and explore the inner and outer reaches of your awareness. The next series of Adventures in Consciousness, the course, is starting soon. Find out more and stake your place at JenniferEvanko.com.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly.
Lights out. Good night.
And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. My guest is Cynthia Sue Larson, and we are speaking today about quantum jumps and shifting reality. I know we started to touch on it a little bit, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you see as reality, the quantum field and the multiverse.
Yeah, this is a fascinating question, and I think it's almost impossible to answer. It's a Zen koan. It's like, what is reality? And it gets down to those levels of awareness that I was touching on earlier. And when we look at reflective cognition, this is our ability to see the world. We're always using reflective cognition, which is an idea of what consciousness is. To me, reality is consciousness. So what is consciousness? They're they're intertwined inextricably. There's no way for me to pull apart consciousness from reality, because I feel like they just go together too closely. We see this in quantum physics, but even the great philosopher and mathematical genius, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, he was aware that consciousness starts with just a simple perception. That's a first order perception. He invented calculus, so of course he's looking at levels also. He starts with that first order of awareness that you perceive something, like you feel your fingers touching, but then you are aware that these are my fingers and that they're touching, and I can feel all sorts of senses. So to get into what is reality, we assume that it's what we can measure, that it's what we know with our five senses and so forth. And that's what a lot of the material realists would say, that's all that's real. But then all the things we're living for, at least all the things I'm living for, cannot be measured. That would be things like love and joy and relationships and these things that are intangible, ephemeral, sort of very difficult things to pin down. But I do have a perception of them. And it's a higher order, higher level reflective cognition of what they are. So reality, therefore, I know that it's much more than just what can be measured. So it's much greater than what we can probably ever in this lifetime fully know. And that's okay.
So it's interesting, you have such heavy degrees with physicists and your MBA, and I'm sure working in a world with scientists who are really concrete. What can I measure? What is real?
Even the metaphysical ones are very locked into that paradigm because they're raised with it. It's so ingrained. It's amazing.
Well, and you were born with that awareness of something other, so outside of this reality, that we try to test and solve the answer from here.
Yes.
You have to go out.
Well, there's another great physicist, Michael Talbot, that wrote the book, The Holographic Universe. And he was also, like me, aware that there's a lot more going on because he was witnessing psychokinetic effects in his home when he was growing up. And it was attributed to ghosts in the house, I think. But for whatever reason, he saw lots of phenomena. That was a different kind of experience. But through my life, I've met my future self. Really, she came into my room, talked to me. I actually spoke out loud to her, apparently, because it alarmed my father. I was a teenage girl, and it was late at night. And so he was wondering, who is she talking to? This is before cell phones. It was the 1970s. So he opened the door and he said, "Are you okay?" And then I realized I was talking out loud to I didn't know what to say. What I just seen was mind-blowing. My future self had walked out of my mirrored closet doors across my room, just giving me love, positive vibes, and lots of good feelings. And then she removed something from the bottom drawer of my desk, lots more love, and then she left. And I didn't even, words failed. There's no way to explain the experience. How do you explain the inexplicable? And then the next morning I searched my drawer where I had hidden under the drawer some love letters from the boyfriend I had that I later married, my first husband, and they were gone. And I could not believe that, I couldn't even piece together what had just happened. So I accused my sister. You just blame her. Who else do you blame? You blame your sibling. You did this. She was outraged. Like, how dare you? And then I realized, okay, she had nothing to do with this. And that made it even weirder. Like, that really happened. That was really, really crazy. But it gave me a message through time. So I think we can and do these things. And Philip K. Dick met his future self. I'm not the only one. And there have been some other great people throughout history that have mentioned this. It's a little bit of an outlier as experiences go, but it does happen. So it's pretty amazing.
But it's interesting meeting your future self when also there's many future selves, right?
Yes.
So I've met a few, and which one are you headed towards?
Well, we're constantly dancing. It's like you like lots of music. Which is your favorite song? It's like, well, is it which song right now? And so time is one of those interesting experiences that gives us the ability, like space does, to travel for our consciousness to be focused in enjoying just one experience at one time.
I was curious at one point, are we, the word I think it was expatiate, the next level of our species is being able to hold multiple lines at once in our awareness. Do you believe this?
I think that's true. I know I do that, and it wreaks havoc with technology quite often. So
today.
Yes, it's happened a lot to me. Seems like, and even, well, I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to bring more of it on, but it's interesting. We'll leave it at that.
And that's important. Any person that I've talked to that experiences these future selves very quickly stops talking about things that they don't want to bring in.
I don't want to, yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to leave that one like, thank you. We're not doing that one right now.
Well, and I think, again, going back to your mantra, how good can it get? I think we're keeping that focus of, because we're bombarded, especially in these days, we're bombarded with what if, what's next, like as you said. And I think it's time to really envision what we do want. Yes?
Yes, and find blessings in every situation. So even when things seem like they're quite dire, just to realize what is the value of this experience right now. And you can start finding the gifts in pretty much anything. I'm not being a Pollyanna because I've gone through the great illness of our times right now. I got the alpha version, and then I got the long version, and I've recovered from both. So, and naturally, while asking what are the gifts and receiving the gifts. So I'm very careful not to name all the details on YouTube and so forth, because apparently we can't talk about these things right now. So I'll leave it to you as to how much you want to. Well, I can leave it at that, but if you want to bring it up, I can go into more detail. But even that, so if people think, oh, she's a Pollyanna, nothing ever goes wrong, that's not true. I get all kinds of interesting experiences, and I always ask, what's the gift? How good can this get? How good can I get?
And maybe instead of Pollyanna, because I've heard that as well, but maybe we should say, we're creating our reality. And
right.
Using our reality. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's because to me, I don't think it's boring to find out how good can it get. I can see multiple possible excellent realities. And to me, they're all interesting, exciting, and fun. To me, it's like, wow, they're all like, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking of that dream I had with these shops that looked just amazing. It's kind of like each experience was like, wow, it's like amazing. That's shopping. Like, this is not just your average commercial experience anymore. It's like, it's educational, it's exciting, it's fun, and it was social. And so if we can imagine these things and bring them in collectively, and we do, and we can, this is a fantastic use of our resources to look at that and our relationship with the earth and each other. Instead of looking at what's wrong and let's fix the problems, that's a lot of sticking fingers in leaky dikes. And instead of doing that, our minds are amazing. Our consciousness is incredibly powerful. What we can envision can be multiple utopias. They're not boring. We can choose between lots of them. I would love that kind of problem.
Yeah. Wow. So we really are in a renaissance, right? In the shift and change.
We have that ability. And when I see that on the dream plane and I realize that was normal, then I realize it's here. We are creating it. It has arrived. And then if you say, well, Cynthia, where is it? Because it might blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I've heard these things. and often I get a lot of interesting emails from people who want to reverse decisions, and because they know you can change the past. They know that I talk about it. So then they bring up a specific example, usually a deceased loved one that they'd like to bring back. And I tell them, yes, anything is possible. But I recommend people start practicing on little things first, manifest those parking spots, have food arrive in your refrigerator that wasn't there earlier. Work on the small stuff first. And then when you get your personal loaves and fishes, then you can move on to, raising the dead, and then they didn't die. And everything's doable. There's no problem. But we often get locked into lower vibrational feelings, such as grief or anxiety or anger. And if those are all lower vibrational frequencies, and if we get, each one of them is fine. There's nothing wrong with any emotion. But if we lock it in, then we tend to get the associated experiences. Does that make sense? So yeah. Staying detached yet entangled with love is the key.
I love that. Entangled with love. Beautiful. I keep listening to you, and I get so drawn in. It's like, where am I going next? I did want to bring up your realityshifters.com and how that's a lot of stories or experiences of this.
Yes, I like to share firsthand reports. I started doing that in the 1990s when I was experiencing reality shifts, and I didn't know what to call them. And then I later found out PMH Atwater had written a book, Future Memory, talking about this connection through time that we have with consciousness. And she had a chapter in there, reality shifts. So she deserves credit for coining that term. And then Michael Talbot, there was a version, I've read a version of his book, Holographic Universe, that did say reality shifting in it. So I give him credit too. But aside from those two, I think I was the third person to bring that term into being, because I just needed a word, a phrase to express, what do you call it when you see something that always was one way, but now it's a different way? And this phenomenon includes everything from missing socks, when you run the laundry and they go in but they don't come out, or when you're in a hurry and you can't find your keys and you know where you put them and they're not there. Usually that's an energy, of course. You're anxious, so you're highly energized and not grounded, and so it's very easy for things to kind of go all over the place into different realities. Not a very fun experience. And then lots of people experience changes in the experience of time. So things appear, disappear, transport, and change in the way they move through time. And I also want to credit Mary Rose Barrington, who understood the parts of this phenomenon, and she was tracking it from 1900 through about the year 2000. She was an English researcher, and she called it just one of those things, or JOTT, J-O-T-T. So this is a well-known phenomenon in certain circles of the metaphysical. But when I started the website Reality Shifters, then I wanted to give voice to people from around the world who are experiencing this, so they can be relieved and know this is normal. Nature works this way, and it's okay. And that's a very good thing that we've now got 20 years of documentation on realityshifters.com showing when, where, what, and very, very descriptive of what type of experience was this. Very open format. And it's all there, so people can see those archives online anytime, free to the public. And it's a huge database, really, of these experiences. So it's wonderful. And then I publish a monthly newsletter, so if you can subscribe and get a monthly dose of possibility and optimism.
Oh, beautiful. And surrounding yourself with that collective that is taking the time to actually observe these phenomena, because I think You've observed yourself, you said since the 90s, in these reality shifts and others?
Yeah, and in the 90s, I realized I have to say something. I have to bring this out, because it's like a closet sort of thing. I would ask neighbors and friends, have you ever noticed that things change, completely change? And that's always been this other way. Like in the book Reality Shifts, I mentioned a jacket that my husband got as a gift, and it was from the North Face, which is it's a business based here in Berkeley, I think, that creates outdoor gear. So if you're camping and that kind of thing, then you're good to go if it rains. He was wishing that knowing him, he tends to rip all his clothes, and he was wishing it was Ripstop, but it wasn't. His parents had given him a regular Gore-Tex jacket. It's a special fabric, but not the Ripstop. And then one day, it was Ripstop, and I asked him, whoa, this is so cool. This is what you wanted, but we didn't get it. Now, did you notice your jacket? Do you notice anything different about your jacket? And I didn't want to prompt him and say what I noticed. And I didn't say it's Ripstop, which means it's like a little grid. And you can see that on the cover of the book Reality Shifts. I used a picture of the fabric pattern of that Ripstop fabric. And he did notice, yeah, wasn't it? It wasn't Ripstop before. And then it was confusing to him, wait, how can that be? How could they have given me a coat that I didn't return, I didn't exchange, and now it's different? Yes, as if it's always been Ripstop. So that's what it feels like.
So starting that observing, because we do have that, our mind will stitch together realities that make sense. But
yes.
When you stop and look, you start in training the mind to notice.
Yes. And now we've got the Mandela effect. So we're having it happening socially. We're collectively noticing these things. And we get the opportunity to take it to the highest level of how good can it get. And maybe we could bring back extinct species, reverse whatever the huge problem of the day might be. I think that's really cool because now we're working together and we're seeing global changes in physiology where our heart used to be on the left side of our chest. In America, my school teachers would take a learning moment and say, okay, children, put your hand over your heart. That's on the left side, not in the center of your chest. Well, guess what? The heart's moved to the center, which is kind of funny. The kidneys have moved to relative safety up closer to the rib cage. We're getting a lot of changes, and that's affecting like 8 billion people on the planet at the same time. A lot of people notice the kidney change where they just moved up because the kidney punch used to be a very deadly area. You want to make sure you don't get punched in the kidneys because you might, there might be pee when you urinate, there might be blood in the urine, and that was a bad sign. But now it's less likely that that would even happen because the kidneys have, like I said, moved upwards. So they're no longer situated where they used to be. And doctors now access them differently than they used to. They go in, the whole thing is different. It's really interesting.
And I've never heard that. And that didn't take evolution to make it happen.
I think evolution does work this way. We see petri dish studies where an organism is given something like a lactose intolerant organism, a bacteria, is given lactose-based food in the petri dish. And in one generation, it can know, kind of like it's working with its future selves and checking all the possible future selves, and then finding, okay, here's one that can digest this thing. We're going to evolve into that next level of organism that can eat what's on the petri dish, and they do. And so that is how nature works. I think we can, when we know what we're looking for, then we notice, oh my gosh, quantum effects are everywhere. And they actually are. And we're starting to see that with things like the way the sense of smell operates, where we can have one molecule of scent in the room, more than one person can smell it. That's kind of impossible. But with quantum physics, as long as you've got basic, plausible deniability, which is that it means that if you know the position of a particular given quantum particle, then you might not know its velocity, so on and so forth. So it's like you can't know everything. So as long as you don't know everything, then you're okay. And nature works that way. And it's able to play with these superpositions of states, the fact that we can be all energy everywhere. And only when we're in relationship with one another do we lock into a given physical form.
Boy, there's a lot in what you just said. I mean, not knowing that we don't know everything. I mean, that's so freeing, right? And so powerful.
I think so. I know humans want to know or they say that they want to know everything, and sometimes pretend that act that way. But actually, I think it's better that we don't.
Well, and I think maybe it's our mind too that's how it works. It wants to lock it all down and make it all, as you said, locked in. And
right.
This quantum revolution you're talking about.
Yes, there's a quantum revolution happening, and it's kind of like a quantum invasion where the quantum physics are now they're just part of every single science, and it'll be more and more so. We'll see more and more of that going on, and it affects things about the way we think. We tend to think that there's one objective reality, one set of facts, and we're seeing that's not true. And now we've got experiments that are showing that subjective reality is much more the case, and it's becoming better and better accepted, at least by physicists. Not yet so much in mainstream thinking, but hopefully we'll get there.
I want to just take a moment and ask you about your two books, because when we first spoke, you came two different approaches to the same topic, and I think that was fascinating. If you would share on those two books.
Yes, Reality Shifts I wrote first, and it's much more of the right brain, intuitive, experiential approach. So this is for someone who doesn't need to have all the facts and figures, but they would like to know just what does it feel like to be in that reality shifting state of mind from the experiential standpoint. And so it just goes right there. And then Quantum Jumps is much more the left brain approach, which addresses. It's the kind of book you could share with your significant other, your parents, your family, your neighbors, your doctor, your lawyer. And that way people could understand that this is something that's quite intellectual, and it's very, no, it's just, it's rational, it's analytical. So that it's really the two ways that we think. It's like the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. So the intuitive book would be the Reality Shifts book, and then the analytical book is Quantum Jumps. But they're complementary. They do go together.
I was going to say, I tend to go towards the intuitive, but I find that the analytical is very important for me to bring it in, to understand and communicate.
Yes, it does help with communicating. So then it can be something where you can say, look, there's something called a placebo effect that I describe in Quantum Jumps and show how it's been doubling in efficacy since the 1980s. And it works for dogs, which, I was noticing with our family dog. So we didn't even do a treatment, my family, because we know we don't need a treatment. We've seen enough things. It's like, we're just going to do that thing we do. We're going to choose the other reality. So we don't even need some like, oh, we're giving the dog this special eye drop. Forget the eye drop. We're just but dogs are very, they just love to work with the placebo effect too. They're, as long as they know that we would like them to get better, they can instantly get better. And horses are quite good at it.
Oh, horses are amazing.
Very. Do you have experiences with horses?
Just from a energetic standpoint, I once had a healing with a horse, and they're like Reiki masters. They're amazing.
Yeah. A lot of animals are totally amazing.
Yeah, they've gotten out of their own way, right?
That's it, exactly. And so it's so much easier to communicate with them when you're, to be an animal communicator is basically to be open so that you can share that consciousness and you don't need the words.
Wow. There's so much in this whole conversation, and I would love to keep going, but we're running out of time here. I do want to mention again, you mentioned the collective you have with your family and being able to work with the dog, and together you have that mirror of it working outside of yourself. So something like your Reality Shifters community or your newsletter would be so valuable for people to get that confirmation.
Yes. And we've also got, I do a YouTube channel too. And so people can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And with International Mandela Effect Conference, we're doing monthly events. So it's another opportunity where there's a live stream. And like you said, community really helps.
Especially now with everything that's going on, it's choosing your community to make this a better place. Let's choose our world.
Yeah, let's create a good one, or lots of good ones.
Yes. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us today.
Thank you.
I really encourage you to pick up her books. That would be Quantum Jump and Reality Shift, and she has 4 others. I also encourage you to check out her website, realityshifters.com. On another note, I have a experience with a free meditation I'd like to share with you, and I would direct you to my website at www.jenniferevanko.com. We have a countdown to a new beginning where we start playing with the territory of time. And actually, I want to talk to you about that with you about time as territory at some point, so we'll have to have you back again, I hope.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, very good. And thank you so much for joining us, and be back in 2 weeks. Thank you.